Picture someone rich. Actually do it. Don't skim past this part. What are they wearing? What did they pull up in? Are they on a beach somewhere? Stepping off a plane? Posting from some rooftop bar you've never heard of? Okay, now here's the thing. That picture you just built, in about 2 seconds, without even trying, it's probably wrong. Not a little wrong either. Like, mostly wrong. Because in real life, most of the genuinely wealthy people you'll ever walk past are gonna look like nobody. Faded t-shirt, car that's older than their kid, standing in the same checkout line as you at the grocery store. Not because they're keeping it humble for the gram, but because that's just their actual life. Meanwhile, somewhere right now, somebody's leasing a car they can't really swing, wearing a watch they're still paying off, and calling that winning. We've been trained, and I mean actually trained, like Pavlov's dog trained, to think wealth equals visibility, equals shine. The version of money that looks good in a photo. And I think that one wrong assumption, just sitting quietly in the back of everybody's head, might genuinely be the most expensive belief a person can carry around. So today, I want to get into why real wealth is boring, why it hides, and why once you actually get this, not just nod along to it, but really get it, it changes how you handle your own money, without you even trying that hard. Let's back up and talk about why we get this so backwards in the first place. Because honestly, it's not really your fault. Think about it. You've never seen anyone's actual bank account, never seen their 401k statement, their net worth on paper. None of it. What you have seen, like 1,000 times over, without clocking that it was happening, is what people choose to show you. The car, the outfit, the vacation photos, the kitchen reno. And showing is a choice. It's curated. Sometimes it's honest. Sometimes it's not. But either way, it's a performance. Nobody's out here posting their savings account balance with a cute caption. Nobody's doing a boomerang of their emergency fund. So your brain, which is just trying to piece together how the world works, from whatever evidence it's got, builds this whole model of wealth out of stuff that's, by definition, loud. That's not dumb. It's not even really vanity. Most of the time. It's just how your brain works. If the only signals you're getting are the visible ones, your brain treats visible as real. But here's the part that gets weird. If you actually look into it, the people spending the most on looking rich are often, statistically, not the ones with the most money. There's this backwards relationship that keeps showing up in the data. The louder the flex, the more likely it's covering for something. Not always, but way more than you'd think. I mean, think about someone financing a car at 9% to drive to a job that barely covers their bills as it is, or someone putting a trip on a card they'll be paying off for over a year. Basically, just so the pictures exist. That's not a character flaw. By the way, I want to be clear about that, because it's real easy for this kind of topic to turn judgy. And that's not the vibe here. It's a response to pressure. Real pressure. The pressure to not look like you're falling behind. To not be the one everyone quietly feels bad for. But that pressure has a cost. And the cost is invisible too. It just shows up later. Quietly. In a retirement account that never got touched. In a stress you can't quite name that lives in your shoulders every time a text comes in about a payment. In years tacked onto your working life. That didn't have to be there. All right, let's actually get into the mechanics. Because once you see how this works, you kind of can't unsee it. Here's a plain, kind of boring truth about money. The stuff that builds wealth and the stuff that shows off wealth are usually two totally different sets of behaviors. And a lot of the time, they're straight up competing with each other. Every dollar you spend making yourself look rich is a dollar that didn't go toward actually getting there. That's not some deep metaphor. That's just math. You've got a $600 car payment. on something that turns heads at a red light, that's $600 a month. Not sitting in an index fund somewhere quietly, boringly, doing nothing exciting for 20 years, except getting bigger. And yeah, compounding gets thrown around so much in this space that it's basically lost all meaning. So let's actually slow down and feel it. Instead of just hearing the word, say you put $200 a month into something averaging around 7% a year, which is roughly what the stock market's done long-term historically. No guarantees, obviously. Markets don't move in a straight line. Year one, that account grows by maybe $100. Kind of underwhelming, honestly. You'd feel a little silly bringing that up at a barbecue. But stick with it. By year 10, that account's grown past what you actually put in, because the early growth started earning its own growth. By year 20, the numbers start doing something that almost feels unfair, in a good way. And not because anything crazy happened. Because nothing happened. No lottery ticket, no genius stock pick, just the same $200, month after month, left alone. And that's the part nobody wants to sit with. Because there's no story in it. I put money in an index fund for 20 years and didn't touch it. Isn't exactly a viral clip. Nobody's filming that. But it's the actual engine behind almost every quiet fortune an ordinary person has ever built. Now compare that to the version of wealth we're shown all day, every day. The highlight reel version. That one usually needs either dumb luck, which by definition you can't just replicate on command, or debt, which you very much can replicate. It just doesn't end well. Let's talk about that specific kind of tired for a sec, because I think this is where the whole invisible wealth thing stops being theoretical and starts feeling personal. You know that tired? That isn't even really about your job. It's the one where you check your account balance before it updates for the day, where you do quiet math in your head at 11 at night, trying to figure out if you make it to the 15th. That tired's got almost nothing to do with how many hours you worked. It's got everything to do with how close to the edge you're living, no matter what your paycheck says. And here's the part that trips people up. Somebody pulling in 90 grand a year, with zero savings, and a stack of payments due, can feel way more anxious, way more genuinely unsafe than somebody making 55. With 6 months saved up and no debt hanging over them. Income and peace of mind are related, sure, but they are not the same thing, not even close. Because financial stress isn't really about the number on the paycheck. It's about the gap, the space between what's coming in and what's already claimed before it even lands in your account. Somebody can make good money and still feel like they're sprinting on a treadmill that never shuts off, because every dollar's already got a job the second it shows up. And somebody else can make way less and feel completely steady, because there's a little slack in the system, some room to breathe. That cushion doesn't show up anywhere visible, doesn't show up in your outfit or your car, but it might honestly be the single biggest difference between a life that feels calm and one that feels like it's one bad week from falling apart. Let's bring family into this too, because money never lives in a vacuum, and pretending it does is kind of why this whole topic feels so loaded for so many people. A lot of us grew up watching money get spent as a stand-in for love, or as proof of something. Maybe it was a parent who worked themselves ragged to give their kids stuff they never had growing up. Maybe showing up empty-handed felt, deep down, like showing up as a failure. Maybe it was that quiet, unspoken competition with siblings or cousins over whose kid was doing better. None of that's silly. It's deeply human, honestly. We're wired, on some old survival level, to care about where we stand in the group. For most of human history, looking capable and resourceful in front of your people actually mattered for staying safe. That wiring didn't just switch off, because we now live in a world of financed SUVs and revolving credit. The instinct's ancient. The trap it walks into is brand new. And that mismatch is where a lot of financial pain quietly sets up shop. So when somebody overspends to keep up appearances at a family thing, or takes on debt so their kid doesn't feel less than their cousin, that's not weakness. That's an old survival instinct, getting yanked around by a modern setup it was never built for. Understanding that doesn't fix it, but it does something almost as useful. It takes the shame off the table. And shame, more than pretty much anything else, is what keeps people from ever looking at their money honestly in the first place. Okay, here's the actual turning point. The thing that changes how you make decisions. Once it really clicks, it's this. The wealth that actually lasts is almost never the kind meant to be seen. Sit with that a second, because it kinda flips the script if you've spent your whole life hearing the opposite. We're taught, mostly without anyone ever saying it out loud, that money is for showing. That the whole point of earning more is having more proof of it that other people can see. But the people who actually build real, lasting security tend to do the opposite. They treat visible spending like a cost, not a reward. And they treat invisible growth, the boring stuff, the stuff nobody claps for, like the actual prize. That shift changes decisions in a pretty specific way. Instead of asking, what's this purchase gonna say about me? It quietly turns into, what's this decision gonna do for me in 5 years, in 10 years, when nobody's watching, and nobody even remembers what I drove to get here? That question feels almost anticlimactic. The first time you ask it, there's no rush attached, no little dopamine hit. But that's kind of the whole point. Real financial peace doesn't come from a hit. It comes from an absence. No dread when a bill shows up. No tightness in your chest when your phone buzzes with a bank alert. And once you feel that absence, even a taste of it, it's genuinely hard to go back to chasing the visible version. Not because you turned into some different person overnight, but because you felt, even briefly, what actual security feels like in your body. And turns out, that feeling is more addictive than any purchase ever was. There's a psychology term that fits perfectly here, and I don't think it gets brought up enough around money. It's called hedonic adaptation. Basically, we adjust to almost everything, good or bad, way faster than we think we will. New car feels amazing for about 3 weeks. Then it's just the car. Bigger place feels like a win for a season. Then it's just where you live. Except now, there's more square footage to clean and pay for and worry about. Visible wealth gets hit hardest by this because its whole value depends on contrast, being new, being noticed, being better than what you had. Once that contrast fades, which it always does, the thing stops doing the job it was bought to do. So your brain, quietly, and right on schedule, starts hunting for the next thing that'll create that contrast again. Invisible wealth doesn't play that game, because it was never built to give you a feeling in the first place. Nobody buys index fund shares to get a rush. The payoff isn't in the moment you buy it. It shows up later, slow, as options. The option to walk away from a job that's making you miserable. The option to take 3 months figuring out your next move instead of grabbing the first offer because you're panicking. The option to help your family out without torching your own foundation. None of that photographs well, but that's the actual substance behind what people mean when they say they want to feel free. Let's get practical for a second, because none of this matters much if it just stays a nice idea. This isn't about depriving yourself or living like some monk to prove a point. That version of frugal has its own trap. It just turns into a different kind of performance, aimed at a different crowd. This is quieter than that. It's about slowly shrinking the gap between what your life looks like on the outside and what it actually is underneath. Maybe that means taking an honest look at one recurring expense that exists mostly for how it looks, and asking if it's really earning its spot. Maybe it means redirecting some small, unglamorous amount, $50, $100 a month, into something that grows quietly, instead of something that loses value the second you drive it home. Maybe it's building a small cushion, even just 1 month of basic expenses. Not because that solves everything, but because it changes the whole emotional weather of your day-to-day, almost right away. People who build even a small buffer say they feel calmer within weeks, usually before the amount's even big enough to matter mathematically. It's not the math healing them yet, it's the safety. None of this needs a dramatic life overhaul. Honestly, the versions of this that actually stick are almost always small and kind of boring. A modest automatic transfer. That happens whether you're paying attention or not. One decision made once. Set it and forget it. Instead of 100 tiny decisions, you have to make fresh every single day, each one needing willpower. You may or may not have that week. The people who quietly build wealth aren't some breed of superhuman with iron discipline. Most of them just took the discipline out of the equation by making the boring choice automatic and making the exciting choice a little harder to get to. That's basically the whole secret. Not thrilling to hear, but it's honest. Let's go back to that picture from the beginning. The one you built in your head of what rich looks like. Bet it's a little harder to summon now, or at least a little messier, because underneath that flashy image, there's usually a quieter, less interesting reality. Somebody who made a lot of unremarkable choices over a long stretch of time that nobody was around to see or clap for. And maybe that's actually good news, if you let it be, because it means you don't need some dramatic turning point, a windfall, a lucky break, or genius nobody ever taught you. You just have to be willing to be a little boring, on purpose, in the parts of your life that don't need an audience. There's a weird kind of relief in that. It means you can quietly stop performing. Means you're allowed to keep driving the older car a while longer. Skip the upgrade. Let your money sit somewhere unglamorous and just grow without needing anyone to notice. The most secure version of your future probably won't look impressive on the way there. And that's not a consolation prize. That's kind of the whole point. You don't have to nail this perfectly. Nobody does. Some months, the visible pull's gonna win. You'll spend on the thing that looks good, instead of the thing that quietly compounds. That's not failure. That's just being a person, living inside a culture that's constantly whispering the opposite lesson in your ear, all day long. What matters more than any single decision is which way you're generally leaning. A little more toward quiet, a little more toward patient, a little more toward the kind of wealth nobody sees, and almost nobody talks about. But that ends up being the only kind. That actually holds up over time. So next time you picture somebody rich, maybe let the image lose a little shine. Let it get a little more ordinary. Somebody in a plain t-shirt, driving something completely unremarkable, not performing for anybody, because they simply don't need to. That's usually what it actually looks like. Boring, invisible, and quietly, completely secure. And honestly, that's a version of rich worth wanting.